Good morning, folks. Minutia Minute here. It stormed all day yesterday, and I thought today might be kind of fun to go for a long walk. So I thought I might walk to the comic book shop today and take you guys with me. So let's see what's up this week in Batman. So back in the day when I was doing YouTube, living in that old apartment that you used to see me in all the time, I used to have to walk actually down to the comic book shop, which at that point was, I want to say it was like 9 miles away, um, which was always a really long walk, but it was actually really close to where my girlfriend at the time, now wife, used to work. So I would walk down there for the day, get down there around time for lunch, catch her on her break, and then head the rest of the way down to the comic book shop, and then hang out there, chat with people, read, that kind of thing, find a coffee shop, whatever it was, just kind of enjoy the day, and then she'd bring me home at the end of the night. If I was feeling super ambitious, I'd go all the way down to Half Price Books, which is one I featured on this channel a few times, and that would be another like 8 miles, so like a 17 mile walk. This walk's a lot shorter. I'm only about 4 miles away to this particular comic book shop that I go to. One of the nice things about living in the Twin Cities area is that everything feels actually pretty close. As you see me walking along here, like if I were to go one direction, it would take you right down to the State Fair. Go another direction, it would take you right down to the zoo. So basically you kind of end up having the amenities of the big city, but it still kind of feels like a small town. All these walks are pretty safe and pretty chill. So as I'm getting to the comic book shop here, I realized it was actually a little bit early. It's only 9:30, they open at 10, so I figured I'd go across and pick up coffee. There's a Barnes & Noble right across the street here, so that keeps things pretty convenient. One of the things that kind of blows my mind is when you go into a Barnes & Noble, like nowadays, you look at manga and like you get over here and you look at this, it's like this huge area for manga, and it's, you know, it's like its own little nook. You could just like hang out there and envelop yourself in manga, and if you want to read the comics, you have to go around the corner, and literally it's like up against the glass, like tucked away across from the mall, which you could say it's on display, but no one in this particular mall like is walking in the main part of the mall. Like it's literally just out of sight, out of mind. So kind of a sad state that comics have found themselves in these days. But anyway, that brings us to the source. I'm gonna go in, see what we've got for Batman books this week. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little slice of life of Minutia Minute, and I will be right with you guys with some reviews. So let's go see what they've got. Alright folks, so as promised, it is a beautiful day out and fresh back from the source with my stack of comics. So let's see what we got this week. So if last week was all about alternate takes on Batman, this week very much the opposite. Only 2 alternate universe books this week. We had Batman the Detective, 5 of 6, almost done with this miniseries. And then Batman The Adventures Continue Season 2, Number 4, which I ended up with the variant cover just because there weren't any cover A's left, which was kind of a bummer. I usually just get cover A. Don't really like paying the extra $1 for the heavier cover and the alternate art. It's just not worth it to me. And then while we've been skirting over it the last couple of weeks, this week is very much a Fear State heavy week. So first up, we've got Batman 113, which this is the second Batman title to ship for the month of September. And then we've got Nightwing, now going full-on Fear State with issue 84. Same thing with Catwoman 35. And then last but certainly not least, we've got new Batman Secret Files, this one on Miracle Molly, also tying into Fear State. And I'm actually pretty excited to read this one because it is written by James Tynion. And I've actually found this character to be pretty intriguing, but really underserved by the rush to the Fear State finish line that the Cowardly Lot story was. So I'm excited to dig in more into that character and see what she has to offer. So just a really quick note on the order of these reviews. I'm going to be reading and reviewing these in the checklist order in the Fear State special, which means I'm going to be kicking things off with Batman 113. That said, as I'm going through reading, if I happen to notice that maybe it made sense to be read in another order for one reason or another, which has already happened within the Fear State arc, I'll be sure to let you guys know. But with that little tidbit out of the way, how is Batman 113 holding up? Well, the big revelation in this book, spoilers, is all about Ghostmaker. So when this kicks off, you have Batman and Ghostmaker sitting down together, and he's going to have Ghostmaker basically read his mind, which of course there is a joke about the idea of a bat mind control helmet, which is like, yuck yuck, but at the same time, like, literally, right? And so a big chunk of the book is spent inside the labyrinth of these two characters' minds. And as I was reading it, I was thinking, like, why is it that Ghostmaker is the guy that Bruce has to trust to read his mind? Like, why is that the guy? Like, why introduce a character like Ghostmaker and utilize him as the person that Batman trusts enough to go inside of his brain? And, there's some verbal sparring that goes into justifying that for the reader. The big takeaway is that you find out that Ghostmaker and Dr. Crane actually have a past, and that Ghostmaker is already familiar with Scarecrow's thoughts on Fear State. So kind of an interesting twist. He went to Scarecrow, or I should say Jonathan Crane, in his quest that ran parallel to Bruce Wayne's quest as he was becoming Batman, which is an interesting enough twist, although I really find myself questioning, could that have been a twist that happened to a more established character, someone we already knew and cared about? Would have given them a little bit more breathing room in the Cowardly Lot, and one fewer plate to spin in this whole epic event. But that said, Batman 113 was an okay read. I think it was probably an improvement over 112 because the story is kind of starting to come to light. So we'll just have to continue to wait and see. As for the backup story, we did get Clown Hunter, chapter 2 of 3, which this is my favorite panel of the entire short story that we got here. And really it's just continuing Clown Hunter's nightmare, having been injected with fear toxin by the Scarecrow in part 1. Overall, to be honest, like, I leafed through this, I read it, I didn't feel like I got a whole lot out of it, just because, again, you're just inside somebody's head. He's been threatened, but there's this sort of abstract element to it that, at least for me, it makes it harder for me to really take seriously. It doesn't feel as imminent. It kind of has the emotional impact of a flashback to me. So take it or leave it. I think Clown Hunter's an interesting character. I don't feel like he's being particularly well served with the backup story, but we'll see if they can pull a rabbit out of a hat. Okay, the second book I read this week was Batman Secret Files, Miracle Molly. While I don't know that this is necessarily a book that needs to be read if you're reading Fear State, if you're interested in Miracle Molly, I thought this was a very good issue. Definitely lived up to what I was hoping to get from it. Ultimately, this book boils down to being the secret history of Miracle Molly. From the cover, I was expecting it to be kind of like anime inspired. Obviously, there's a kind of heavy Akira sort of influence on the whole Unsanity collective. But then I opened it up, and much to my surprise, so the art on this is by Danny, who I don't know who that is. But the style she employs in this is very Frank Miller, and particularly like Frank Miller Ronin, which I thought fit this story really, really well. So overall, very impressed with the artwork in this. I thought that it really surprised me in a very, very good way. As for the story itself, you find Miracle Molly robbing from the rich, only to discover that the family that she's robbing is a family that she knew from her past life, and it's actually her husband. You learn that in her past life she was Mary Kowalski, and you get to see all the mundane rituals of her in her life with a husband she doesn't really love, constantly retreating further and further into her computer, where she meets Master Wise. And after a period where she tries to find a way to salvage the life she already has and sort of win on her own terms, she becomes beaten down by the system and ultimately succumbs to her new life as Miracle Molly. There's a lot of great pages like this one, where it's just a montage of like her day-to-day, how mundane her life is versus the world that she is slowly getting acclimatized to and falling in love with. You can see the use of color here, where everything in the real world is just very drab and beige, where you get bright spots of color when she's kind of in her own universe, where she is Miracle Molly, kind of in name only, where she becomes the Miracle Molly we all know at the end of the story. So overall, really, really good read if you like Miracle Molly. This is definitely going to be a pickup for you. Not necessarily a pickup if you're just interested in Fear State. I would imagine this is really just background for her character and won't tie back in directly to Fear State. But if you're interested, I do recommend checking this one out. Definitely Okay, so you guys know I am always excited to read Ramvy's Catwoman. Now that we're on to Fear State, the question is, will the quality hold up? First thing I noticed when I picked this book up is we don't have the regular artist on this right now. Instead, we have Nina Vakuva? Sorry, don't know how to say your name. And as you can see, definitely a similar style to what we've seen in regular issues of Catwoman. And overall, I thought really fit the tone of the book well. The imagery of like Gotham on fire and Alleytown in extreme distress, I thought they did a really good job of bringing out just in the artwork on this, which was really, really cool. As far as how the story for this fits into the greater Fear State narrative, we've got Catwoman, who finds out from the anti-Oracle that Batman is dead. She races off to try and figure out if that's really true. The majority of the book is really centered around what some of Gotham's supporting villains are up to during this whole Fear State event. There's a great moment midway through the book where the Riddler and the Penguin get together, and the Penguin talks about how he's like been playing his cards right this whole time, and that, you know, this is a perfect environment for him to peddle this new drug that's derived from poison ivy, which comes off kind of funny just because obviously this is all Scarecrow's machinations, and Penguin being sort of a loud voice in a small room, I thought was particularly fitting and kind of a lot of fun. And the idea that he's going to be taking over Alleytown with the Riddler. Interesting direction for the story to go that can both tie into Fear State and some of the stuff we've gotten from the book so far before Fear State launched. My favorite part in this book is when he calls the Riddler, and Riddler has his Penguin ringtone set as quack, 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 quack. I thought that was particularly good. So if you're not reading Catwoman, this might be a good place to hop on since it's tying into Fear State. I do really, really like this book still, and so far not hurt by the fact that it's in the crossover, which is very exciting. I was kind of worried about it. Okay, so that makes the last review of the week, Nightwing 84, which now having read all 4 of the Fear State tie-ins, I felt that the order given in the checklist actually matched this week, which is great. It's hard to say exactly where this fits into the timeline because you do have a short team up with Nightwing and Batman. It'll be interesting to see if there's a clear point in the main Fear State storyline where that actually makes sense to have happened. And in this story, we get basically the setup for the hunt for the anti-Oracle. Sad to say, when I opened this book up, it was basically the exact opposite reaction I had to Catwoman and Miracle Molly, where I opened the book up and I did find the artwork somewhat disappointing. I think if this is, if this style artwork is kind of your thing, then I'm glad you got what you wanted. For me, this just felt a little too much like those like DC Inc. team books that are coming out like through Scholastic or whatever, It just didn't feel like it fit the tone of everything that's going on in Fear State and the way it's being rendered in other titles. So that is one big downside for Nightwing 84. But that said, the story itself, definitely intriguing, definitely feels like an integral part to the Fear State storyline, and ultimately a great twist at the end, which I am going to go ahead and spoil for you, which is when Nightwing finally catches up with Oracle in the clock tower. She decides she's had enough, and she is suiting back up as Batgirl to rejoin the fight, which got me pretty excited. Obviously, there could be huge repercussions for this down the road. It's going to be interesting to see. They've been teasing re-crippling Oracle on a more permanent basis. Obviously, that was a big part of the Joker War storyline, so it's going to be really interesting to see where that goes in Nightwing as we move forward. But ultimately, for now, I'm just excited to have Nightwing and Batgirl together in this Fear State story arc. So definitely looking forward to see what happens as Nightwing continues. As one of my favorite books alongside Catwoman month to month, I would say Catwoman was the issue that I felt like maintained quality more so than Nightwing, but this was still a worthy read. Definitely worth your time if you're reading this. Alright guys, thanks for watching This Week in Batman. 4 Fear State titles, all of which were pretty good. Typically I would try to recommend which book you want to pick up. I mean, the reality is the most essential book obviously is going to be Batman 113. But that said, it was actually probably my least favorite book of the week. I thought that Miracle Molly definitely was a worthy pickup if you're interested in her as a character. I thought her secret origin was particularly well told with great art, so definitely a recommend on that. And both Catwoman and Nightwing definitely kicking things off with a bang. Both of which interesting books. If you're not super interested in Fear State, you probably could pick up Catwoman on its own and just understand the Fear State event in the background. This seems to be the most independent of the Fear State tie-ins so far, and probably the most connected one being Nightwing. So hopefully that's helpful to you guys in deciding what you want to pick up this week. So with that, I really appreciate you guys going to the comic book shop with me, checking out what's going on in Batman, and hope you guys have a great week in comics. Have a good one.